And today, for the tech stage, I'm going to talk about something that has really like opened up a lot of doors for me, which is with mirrorless cameras. The great thing is mirrorless cameras are nice and thin. So we've finally been able to realize the ability to have what's as close to a universal lens mount as you could ever imagine. I'm shooting a lot with the Sony Mirrorless A7 line series cameras, and I can shoot with, I had over the years a closet full of lenses. Like when I got rid of cameras, a lot of times I'd keep lenses around. Virtually any lens, full frame lens that's ever been made, you can use on these cameras. So it really becomes almost a universal lens mount. So, everything from my alpha glass to some Canon lenses I still had around, Nikon, Leica, I'll put them to use. So starting with, and like one of the things that sort of gets lost in the fray is Sony Alpha has like a huge lineup of their own lenses. So a lot of my Sony A-mount lenses I'm able to use on my E-mount cameras there's two different lens mount adapters. The Sony LA-EA3, which is the adapter you see on the left there, and the LA-EA4. The difference, the EA4 has SLT mirror inside of it for focus assist, whereas the LA-EA3 is just basically a smart adapter that uses the camera's focus system that works particularly well with the new Alpha 7R Mark II. So, everything all the way up to the 500 f4, I'm able to add that to the repertoire where, there's certain times if I'm off shooting and the joy of mirrorless cameras is the nice, small, compact size. But when I really want a telephoto point of view to compress things, I'm able to use either that lens, or Sony also has a 70 to 400 f4 that's about the size of a 70 to 200, and really compress the point of view and the perspective. For a lot of people who are Canon EF users, like bringing that lens line around. I've got probably 4 or 5 articles on my website, on my blog, that get about 2,000 hits a day on lens adapters. So I know a lot of people are trying to make these things work, and the technology keeps advancing, keeps getting better as we go along. Here are 3 of the most popular lens mount adapters. The Metabones Smart Adapter 4. It's now up to the 4T is the newest version. But there's also, that's about a $400 adapter, but there's also $100 adapters from Photodox and Viltrox that work very well as well. The advantage that I see for Metabones, and why, even though I test all these things out, the advantage for Metabones is it actually works better with the image stabilization system in the Sony Mark II cameras, where you're able to, if you've got a lens that's image stabilized and the image stabilization is on, the adapter tells the Sony camera not to apply image stabilization. If you turn the switch off on the lens, it will turn on the camera's internal 5-axis image stabilization to give you, typically with Canon lenses, you get 3-axis, you get pitch, yaw, and roll. And so the reason that I use is, again, it's like a lot of the lenses that I've had. When I sold my Canon cameras, I kept the 85 1.2 because it was really kind of that lens wide open has a very dreamy look where I'm not sitting there and going through Photoshop and creating a different effect. And here it is on the camera. It's pretty big. But why I like that is a lot of times when I've got a shoot of celebrities, it's not unusual to have 15 minutes with somebody. And the magazines always promise them, oh, he'll be really fast. He'll shoot you in 15 minutes and be out of there. And then they'll call me up and go, oh, make sure we have a ton of choices to work with. Like, no problem that we gave you 15 minutes to work, but come back with something. And so one of the things that I love about it is I can cover it the safe way first. So shooting with strobe, ProPhoto strobe. This is the shot on the left is with the FE55 1.8. So I'm shooting with strobe, it's gonna be razor sharp. I know I can like cover the shoot real quick. And then rather than relighting the subject or coming to a different set, all I did was turn off the pocket wizard in the camera and mounted the 85-1.2, and then just shooting just with the model lights, wide open at 1.2, we get this where I'm focusing right on his eyes. And for this focus, that's version 1 of the lens. So it's basically, with all the smart adapters, it's an older focus system, so it's like I'm shooting manual focus. But what I like about that is with focus peaking, I can actually set it at the lowest settings, and I can watch the focus track on his eyelashes. So it comes in so tight that it's like I can basically follow the focus right to the surface of his eyes. So that works out really great. But coming up with like 2 totally different looks very quickly. Once again, this is strobe with the FE55 Zeiss lens. Very, very sharp and crisp. And then when I switched over to the 85-1.2, again, that wide open, kind of dreamy look where everything falls off. But being able to do this very quickly, he was in and out in 15 minutes. And actually, I thanked him, and he's like, wow, you really meant what they said. That was fast and easy. So sometimes you do that type of experience, and people are happy to work with you again. So what I was talking about earlier, so working with focus peaking, you've got a couple different levels that you can set. I usually set the peaking level to either mid or low. You actually want less sensitivity. I find that like if you've got it in high, it's way too sensitive. So I usually select mid or low. You're also, shooting at this, it's like you don't want everything to light up. And then you've also got option of peaking color. And for peaking color, you want to pick something that contrasts with the scene. So typically, I will usually use either yellow or red. If you're shooting a yellow school bus, you're not going to want to use yellow, you're going to want to use red. If you're shooting in an all red room, yellow works good. Another trick that actually is really cool with the Sony cameras, if you've got live view setting effect turned on, and you select the creative style of black and white, if you're shooting raw, all that's really going to change is your preview image. You're still going to get a full color image, but you see in the EVF and on the LCD, you see a black and white image. That combined with red, wow, focus peaking really works, that combination together. So if you're having trouble where the scenes has a lot of colors and you can't quite see what you're doing, that's really the trick. Activate that and it'll work great. Probably the most popular adapters out there are for Leica M-mount cameras. When I got the original NEX5, within a week of that camera's announcement, I found on eBay there were already lens adapters made that you could mount Leica lenses on E-mount cameras. So there's quite a few of those. I mean, they're everything from like $10 for the cheapest generic versions to, this is actually that first one that I bought off eBay, which at the time was about $50. This is with my Leica 24 2.8, taking it down for the very first time, shooting in Haiti with it, like the degree of detail that you capture. And again, this is a lens that I had sitting around gathering dust. I used to have Leica film cameras, but I never wanted to drop $8,000 on a digital Leica M, but it's like for $50, suddenly this lens gets new usage. This is the Olafson Hotel down in Port-au-Prince, and just capturing that really fine detail. Another lens that I had that I hadn't shot with in a long time, Zeiss makes an 18 millimeter f4 M-mount lens, and I shot this picture with it. A storm was coming in, and I saw these dark clouds. And one of the things that I'd encourage you, like if you're off shooting and you see the bad weather, sometimes those moments before the storm hits are actually the most beautiful light that you'll see all day. So I was driving around and I saw these dark clouds, and I was like, oh my God, I saw this church yesterday that had been pretty much destroyed in the earthquake, I've got to get down there. So I drove through town, rushed down, and sure enough, the dark clouds behind it. And I just saw a couple people walking around, shooting this image, climbing on top of basically some of the debris, shooting this. But this is where the really wide lens came in handy, and having that degree of detail that I'm cropping in. This is with the A7R, where cropping in, there's no optical low pass filter, so it's extremely sharp. Even, when I'm going from this to a very tight crop across here, that's basically a 4K crop out of a 36 megapixel sensor. So being able to capture that level of detail. And then this is actually my favorite adapter. It's a little more expensive. This is Voigtlander makes an adapter called the VME adapter. And the great thing about that is it's got helicoid focusing in it. One of the things with a lot of rangefinder lenses, typically rangefinders are not that accurate when you get really close because your eye is here and your focus is from there. So a lot of rangefinder lenses in maybe the 50 millimeter category never focus closer than a meter. So you can't really do a tight portrait on a rangefinder camera. However, with this adapter, I'm actually able to shoot pictures I couldn't do with a rangefinder camera because it adds an extra close focus. So it racks out an extra 4 millimeters, which sounds like nothing at all, but it basically will take you from like a half body shot to a tight face. So that's where that comes in really handy, doing portraits like this. Another one of my rangefinder lenses I had, Voigtlander makes a 50 millimeter 1.1 for about $1,000. So you want that fast, high-speed lens, but also now the ability to shoot a tighter image with it. For tighter portraits like this. Monkey portraits. Believe me, I photographed lots of celebrities. Monkeys are the most difficult subjects you'll ever have. No celebrity will ever match. But we caught this one. And this is not with the lens adapter. This is just showing off with the camera with a wide angle lens. And one of the things, like a lot of times as I'm composing, I like to compose off of the LCD, where a lot of times I'm not always having the camera up at my eye. I'll flip the LCD up so it's sort of facing me, and I'll just kind of compose on that. And when you're shooting in the streets of India where cows are sacred, if you want to do a ground level shot, being able to hold the camera down instead of lying on the ground is a very good thing. Nikon F adapters. At this point with Nikon F, all the adapters are manual focus. There is a certain rumor site that keeps posting pictures that it's supposedly a ComLight adapter is coming. That's all at this point it is, that an autofocus adapter is coming for Nikon F glass. I don't know anything other than I've seen, but hopefully at some point soon there will be an AF adapter. What is going to happen with that is certain lenses, probably the most recent, will probably work better than lenses from 1996, similar to the way Canon does. The more recent a lens is, typically it's going to work better, but right now Nikon F glass is manual focus, but one of the great things is there's tons of great inexpensive manual focus Nikon lenses. This is a 55 1.2 that I picked up at B&H for $380, paired with a $60 adapter. I've got a 55 1.2 for my A-mount cameras that's very inexpensive. So again, I'm focusing using focus peaking. This we shot in one of the hotels in Vegas under blue neon light. So we were talking earlier, I'm not gonna shoot, or under red neon light, I'm not gonna shoot with red as my color under red. In this instance, I used yellow, and I was able to, both with focus peaking and focus magnification, zoom in to the point. Again, here's that 4K crop out of the 36 megapixel image, where we're putting the focus like right there on the iris of the eye. You know, the combination of those two things together give me more accurate focus than I ever could with autofocus or using other focusing aids. And then one of the kind of cool, it's kind of a niche adapter, but it's really cool, so I like to talk about this. Lens Baby, in addition to everything else they have, they've got an adapter that came out for Sony E-mount called the Tilt Transformer. It's only made for Nikon F glass, but it basically turns every Nikon F lens, I mean everything from, you know, a 6mm fisheye up to a 1200 millimeter that you could mount on this, you can get tilt look. So this is, you know, using it just with that same 55 1.2, and you know, most tilt lenses are like 2.8, 3.5, not really that fast. Start going out with a tilt lens that's 1.2, very, very selective focus. This is just a handheld shot of the neon on Ocean Drive as the light was going down. You know, really, really shallow depth of field, being able to play around with it. You know, again, it's like adding up a few of these things, and it's just like, it's really the number of lens selections are limitless. And then one of the, like, honestly, like one of the great bargains on legacy lenses is Leica R. They're available for really a fraction of the price of Leica M glass because, you know, at this point there's no cameras that have been made for Leica R in, you know, probably the last 15 years or so. They briefly had a digital camera for Leica R, but I don't think it really sold a lot. So it's like lenses, I picked these things up for usually about half the price of a comparable Leica M, and a lot of them are exceptionally sharp. This is shooting with the 60 millimeter macro, which again was maybe about a $350 lens paired with a $60 adapter, and both a nice tight portrait here, and then, you know, coming in, want to shoot down to 1:1. You can do that as well. So it really opens up for people who have a lot of legacy glass or want to pick up some unusual lenses for a different look. It opens up a lot of possibilities that way. You know, just in terms of, as a portrait photographer, I think I own 8 lenses between 75 millimeter and 90. And I'm always like trying new stuff out. But as I was showing earlier, just the ability to, like, you know, the Canon 85 1.2, if I really want that dreamlike shallow depth of field with, you know, just a little bit in focus, everything else blown out, or possibly the sharpest portrait lens I've ever shot with, or actually I'll say unquestionably is the Zeiss Otis 85 1.4. They don't make an E-mount version, but they make both Canon EF and Nikon. Some people like the Nikon version because you're manual setting the f-stop. I actually like the Canon EF version because all the metadata is stored and you're setting it electronically. But whichever you want, or one of my absolute favorites, the Sony A-mount 135 1.8. So just having that really like a limitless choice of selection in terms of like all of these things work. Here's that 85 Otis lens. You know, I tested this out with a friend of mine, and this is just basically, I had him in window light, and then I just liked the way the light was kind of reflecting off the ground. So this is just like a Profoto beauty dish basically aimed at the ground. So there's a sliver of light just coming from the side straight toward him. You can see it as we zoom in. Like, that's the light right there, just a little sliver lighting it up, and it's like zooming in at that at like beyond 100%, all the crisp, you know, the eyebrows and everything. And I shot this at about 2.8, so like typically even if the lens is gonna go to 1.4, you know, at 2.8 you still have very shallow depth of field, so it's just a little bit more forgiving if you're doing a portrait, have a little bit more depth. And then finally, I've got a book detailing this and a lot of other things about the A7 series that launched as one of the as the #1 new release in photography right here by our sponsors, Amazon. So I've got that as a reference if you want to read more about these cameras and find out more about lens adapters. We're toward the end of the show. I think we're still okay. We've got a few more minutes. Is any questions out there? Yes.
So with those Leica lenses you're talking about,
Yeah.
can you still get autofocus?
No. I mean, every Leica lens that was ever made is manual focus, and the camera preserves, the lens adapters preserve that manual focus, just like old school. So it's like if a lens was made for manual focus, adapters aren't going to change that. But pretty much the same way that you're using, the lenses have an aperture ring, so you're setting that the way you always have. One of the things I would say, because you are setting the aperture ring on the lens, you're going to basically be focusing at your shooting aperture. So with focus peaking, if you're shooting with a wide angle lens and you have it stopped all the way down to f/22, it's actually going to show too much stuff is in focus. So a lot of times with a real wide lens, I'm gonna focus first at 2.8 and then stop down to my shooting aperture. So, yes.
Is there any good alternative to metabones for Canon lenses?
Yeah, I was showing earlier a slide of my second favorite on that is photodiox, and in fact, I would say if you're not using image stabilized Canon lenses, it works just as well. That's probably the big plus that photodiox is having, or that Metabones is doing, is that they handle image stabilization a little bit better. But they've been very proactive in the last 2 weeks. They've released 3 updates to their firmware. So they're constantly looking at how the adapter is working with all the cameras. So yeah, it's 4 times the price. It may not be 4 times better, but there are some advantages to getting the Metabones. But if you're looking at that $100 price point, photodiox is very, very good. Anyone else? Yes.
I've got a non-technical question.
Okay.
You're photographing celebrities.
Uh-huh.
How did you go from being small time to big time? Is it a gradual process?
Well, I'm still small time, so it's no, I think so one of the things is you have to find that way to make the next step. So one of the things is I was shooting for a lot of magazines like Rolling Stone, but I was doing more photojournalistic stories for them, like on women in the military. So the way that I really made the jump to the next thing is to show them that I could do that sort of work. And it's kind of that catch-22, how do you photograph celebrities if you haven't shot them? I actually did a project that everybody has a different answer to this, but what worked really well for me was I did a project on burlesque, which both gave me the opportunity to put a lot of performers back in the spotlight who really deserved it, but also a chance for me to showcase the work, the way that I would approach a celebrity shoot, but with people who were much more accessible. So that's probably one of the things, is to be able to find, everywhere in America, you're going to find performers of some sort showing that type of work, what approach you would take. And I said on a talk that I did earlier today, one of the keys is when you're shooting celebrities, you want to treat them like they're regular people, but when you're shooting regular people, treat them like they're stars. So you've got the opportunity, maybe some friends, maybe some local actors, go out and give them the star treatment, show the way that you would approach a celebrity shoot. Yes?
So you have no time to prepare, you get a celebrity or whoever to shoot. What are you carrying with you?
Yeah, so typically, hopefully you've got a little bit of time to prepare, but I've done shoots where we're shooting 30 people in a day. The 2 go-to lenses for me are a 24-70, because actually at 70 millimeters, that's one of my favorite portrait focal lengths. It's just a little bit closer, a little bit more intimate. It gets away from the roundness and flattens the perspective a bit compared to 50 millimeters, but 24-70 and an 85-1.4, between those two lenses, I could shoot 98% of what I do. So that's a real go-to. And I think, one of the things is really know your gear. Sometimes paring down your choices and going, I'm gonna have one body with each of those lenses and one light, working simple. And what you wanna do is be so familiar with your gear that all you're concentrating on while you're shooting is the person in front of your lens. So get to know your equipment, know it back and forth, and then the actual execution of portrait photography is all about the interaction with you and your subject. Cool. Well, I think I have exceeded my time. I want to thank Amazon and DP Review for having me out here, and thank you all and enjoy the show.